was tired. He had been flying his old cargo ship through empty space for 3 days without rest. The ship was called the Wandering Star, and it was not a beautiful ship. The metal walls had rust spots. The engine made strange noises, but it was his home, and he loved it. He was carrying medicine to a small colony on the edge of known space. The colony had sick children, and the big companies would not help them. There was no profit in helping poor farmers on distant planets, so did it himself, even though the pay was almost nothing. The ship's alarm suddenly screamed, jumped in his seat and looked at the screen. There was a distress signal coming from somewhere nearby. He checked the location. It was in a field of broken rocks and old ship pieces, a dangerous place. Many pirates used fake distress signals to trap ships in areas like this. Knew he should ignore it. He had important medicine to deliver. He had no weapons on his ship. If it was a trap, he would die. But his mother's voice echoed in his mind. She used to say that a person who ignores someone in need is not really living at all. He changed direction and flew toward the signal. The debris field was worse than he expected. Huge pieces of destroyed ships floated everywhere. Some were very old, from wars that happened before was born. He moved carefully through the metal graveyard, following the weak signal. Then he saw it, a small shuttle, white and sleek, clearly very expensive, but it was broken. The side was torn open like something had bitten it. Burn marks covered the hull. Someone had attacked this ship with powerful weapons. Brought the Wandering Star close and connected the two ships. He put on his breathing mask and climbed through the broken shuttle. Inside, everything was destroyed. Seats were torn. Screens were shattered. And on the floor, lying in a pool of blood, was a woman. She was young, maybe 30 years old. Her hair was long and black, spread around her head like dark water. She wore simple gray clothes, but the fabric looked expensive when touched it. There was a deep cut on her forehead, and she was not moving. For a terrible moment, thought she was dead. Then he saw her chest move slightly. She was breathing. He carried her back to his ship. She weighed almost nothing in his arms. He laid her on his only bed and cleaned her wound with the medical supplies he was supposed to deliver. The cut was bad but not deadly. She had lost blood, but she would live. Sat beside her and waited. He checked the shuttle's computer, but someone had destroyed all the data. There were no records of who she was, where she came from, or who had attacked her. She was a mystery. 3 days passed. Slept on the floor and gave the woman water when she seemed to need it. On the 3rd day, her eyes opened. They were dark brown, almost black, and very sharp. She looked around the small room with confusion, then fear, then something like calculation. Had seen that look before, on people who were always thinking, always planning. "Where am I?" she asked. Her voice was dry and weak. "My ship," said, "the Wandering Star. I found you in a destroyed shuttle. Someone attacked you." The woman touched her bandaged head and winced. "How long?" 3 days. You lost a lot of blood. I used my medicine supplies on you." He paused. "I was supposed to deliver those to a colony, sick children, but you needed them more." Something changed in the woman's eyes. She looked at him differently, like she was seeing him for the first time. "You used medicine meant for children, on a stranger." "You were dying," said simply. "The children are sick but not dying. I can get more medicine. I could not get another you." The woman stared at him for a long moment, then she looked away. "My name is I worked for a merchant. As an assistant, we were attacked by raiders. I think everyone else is dead." Nodded. He did not fully believe her. Her hands were too soft for work. Her speech was too careful, but everyone had secrets and hers were not his business. "I can take you to the next station," he offered. "You can contact your family from there, find a way home." His face became pale. "The people who attacked us, they might be looking for survivors. If I go to a station, they might find me." She hesitated. "Could I stay with you, just for a while? Until we reach the inner systems where there are more people, more safety. I can work. I can help." looked at her soft hands and expensive clothes. He doubted she had ever worked a day in her life. But there was real fear in her eyes, and he thought of his sister. She had disappeared 10 years ago, lost somewhere in the vastness of space. He had always hoped that someone had helped her wherever she was. "Okay," he said. "You can stay, but you work. I do not carry passengers." Nodded quickly. "Thank you. I will not be a burden, I promise." Stood up and walked to the door. "Get some rest. Tomorrow I teach you how to run a cargo ship." As he left, he did not see the tears that fell from his eyes. He did not see her hands shaking. And he did not see the small mark on her wrist, hidden under her sleeve. A mark that only the royal family of the greatest empire in the galaxy was allowed to wear. She whispered to herself in the empty room. "He does not know, he truly does not know, and he helped me anyway." It was the first time in her life that someone had helped her without wanting something in return. She did not know what to do with that feeling, so she simply cried silently until sleep took her again. The first week was a disaster. Broke everything she touched. She tried to cook food and burned it so badly that the smoke alarm screamed for an hour. She tried to clean the air filters and somehow made them worse. She tried to help fix a small leak in the engine room and flooded the entire floor with blue cooling liquid. Found her standing in the middle of the mess, covered from head to toe in the bright blue fluid, looking like she might cry. He laughed. He could not help it. The sound came from deep in his chest, a real laugh that he had not made in years. Looked at him with shock, then embarrassment, then something that might have been the beginning of a smile. "I am sorry," she said. "I told you I would not be a burden, and I have been nothing but trouble." Shook his head, still smiling. "Everyone fails at first, that is how learning works. Come, I will show you again, slower this time." He taught her properly after that. He showed her which buttons controlled the oxygen levels and which ones controlled the temperature. He taught her how to read the navigation screens and understand the fuel measurements. He explained how the engine worked, using simple words and patient demonstrations. Learned fast, very fast. Noticed that she only needed to be shown something once before she understood it completely. Her mind was sharp like a knife, cutting through problems that would confuse most people. But she hid this intelligence behind questions and careful expressions. She was pretending to be less than she was, saw this clearly, but he said nothing. Everyone had their reasons. What surprised him more was her curiosity about him. She asked endless questions, not about the ship or about space, but about his life. Where did he grow up? What were his parents like? Did he have friends? What made him happy? "I grew up on New," he told her one evening. They were sitting in the small kitchen area, eating simple rice and vegetables. It was a farming colony, very poor. We grew food and sent it to other planets, but we never had enough for ourselves. "That sounds difficult," said. It was, but it was also good. The people there helped each other. When one family had trouble, everyone came together. When there was not enough food, we shared what we had." He paused, remembering. "My mother used to say that being rich in money means nothing if you are poor in heart." Was quiet for a moment. "Your mother sounds wise." She died when I was 15. A sickness came to the colony. We did not have medicine. My father died too, and my sister." He stopped. "Your sister?" "She left to find help. She took a small ship and went to ask the inner planets for medicine. She never came back. I do not know if she died or got lost or just forgot about us." Reached across the table and touched his hand. Her fingers were still soft, but they were starting to show small rough spots from work. "I am sorry," she said. "That is a heavy thing to carry." Shrugged, but his eyes were sad. "It is why I do this work, bringing supplies to colonies that everyone else ignores. Maybe somewhere out there, someone helped my sister. Maybe someone will help those children we are bringing medicine to. Small kindnesses can travel far." "But you make almost no money," said. "You risk your life flying through dangerous space. The big companies pay well for cargo haulers. You could be comfortable. Comfortable is not the same as happy, said. Those companies do not care about people. They care about profit. I would rather be poor and useful than rich and empty. Stared at him like he had said something impossible. Where I come from, she said slowly, people do not think this way. Power is everything. Wealth is everything. Helping others without getting something back is considered stupid. Maybe it is stupid, admitted. But my mother also said that being human means choosing to be stupid in the right ways. Animals only care about survival. Humans can choose to care about more. That night after went asleep on his floor mat, stayed awake. She looked out the small window at the stars passing by. In her real life, she owned hundreds of planets. She controlled more money than most species would see in 1,000 generations. People bowed to her. People feared her. People wanted things from her every moment of every day. But nobody had ever spoken to her the way did. Nobody had ever shared food with her and asked nothing in return. Nobody had ever laughed at her mistakes and then patiently taught her how to do better. She thought about her palace, with its golden walls and servants who never looked her in the eyes. She thought about her advisors, who smiled with their mouths but never with their hearts. She thought about the people who had tried to kill her, people she had trusted for years. And she thought about this simple man, sleeping on a hard floor so she could have his bed, flying a broken ship through dangerous space to help sick children he had never met. Tears fell down her face again. She did not understand why she kept crying. She had not cried in 20 years. But something about this place, this ship, this man, was breaking down walls she had built long ago. Choosing to be stupid in the right ways, she whispered to herself. Is that what being human means? She did not have an answer, but for the first time in her life, she wanted to find out. They had been traveling together for almost 2 months when the enemy found them. Was teaching how to read star maps when the alarm started screaming. He ran to the control room and felt his blood turn cold. 4 ships had appeared from nowhere, surrounding the wandering star in a perfect circle. These were not normal ships. They were warships, huge and covered with weapons. Their black metal bodies looked like monsters waiting to eat them. Cargo vessel Wandering Star, a cold voice said through the radio. You are carrying something that belongs to us. Surrender the woman and we will let you leave with your life. Refuse, and we will destroy you. Turned to look at. She was standing in the doorway and her face had changed. The soft, uncertain woman he had known for 2 months was gone. In her place was someone harder, someone who had seen terrible things and survived them. You should give me to them, said. Her voice was calm but heavy. These people are not pirates, they are trained killers. Your ship has no weapons. You cannot fight them. You cannot run from them. If you try, they will kill you. Who are they? Asked. People who want me dead. She walked toward him. Please, you have shown me more kindness in 2 months than I have received in my entire life. I will not let you die for me. Just open the door and let them take me. Looked at the ships on his screen. He looked at their weapons, counting at least 20 guns on each vessel. He looked at his own ship, old and tired and held together with hope and repair tape. Then he looked at. No, he said. Please. You are crew now. He sat down in the pilot's seat and started pressing buttons. We do not abandon crew. The Wandering Star jumped forward like a scared animal. The warships fired immediately, bright red beams cutting through space where the cargo ship had been a second before, but was already moving, diving toward a field of floating rocks nearby. The asteroid field was dense and dangerous. Huge rocks spun and crashed into each other constantly. No smart pilot would fly into it, but had flown through this area many times before. He knew its secrets. Hold on to something, he shouted. The Wandering Star twisted and turned through the rocks. Hands moved faster than could follow, adjusting speed and direction every second. The ship groaned and shook as rocks scraped against its sides, but he kept going deeper into the field. The warships followed. They were faster and stronger, but they were also bigger. The first one tried to follow through a narrow gap between two spinning asteroids. It did not fit. The rocks crushed it like a hand crushing an insect, and the ship exploded in a ball of orange fire. "One down," said through his teeth. The second warship learned from the first one's mistake. It flew around the rocks instead of through them, trying to cut off escape, but was ready. He led them toward a cloud of green and yellow gas, a radiation zone that would destroy any unprotected ship systems. The wandering star had special shields for radiation. It was old technology, ugly and heavy, but it worked. The warship did not have such protection. When it entered the cloud, its engines died. It floated away, blind and helpless. "Two down," said. Sweat was pouring down his face. The third warship was smarter. It stayed back and fired missiles that could follow the wandering star through the rocks, flew close to the largest asteroids, using them as shields. The missiles hit the rocks instead of his ship, but each explosion sent dangerous pieces flying everywhere. One piece hit the wandering star's side and tore a hole in the metal. Air started escaping. Alarms screamed warnings about pressure loss, grabbed emergency masks and threw one to without being asked. "We cannot keep running," she shouted over the noise. "I know," pulled the ship into a tight spin, avoiding 3 more missiles. "I have an idea. It is stupid." "How stupid?" "Very stupid. Hold on." He turned the ship around and flew directly at the third warship. The enemy clearly did not expect this. They fired everything they had, but was flying in wild patterns that made it impossible to hit him. At the last second, he lifted the nose of the wandering star and crashed his reinforced cargo bay directly into the warship's weapon systems. The impact was terrible, was thrown from his seat. His arm hit the wall and he heard something break. Pain exploded through his body. But when he looked at the screen, the third warship was falling away, its weapons destroyed, unable to fight. "3 down," he whispered. The fourth warship had seen enough. It turned and flew away, disappearing into fold space. The attackers were gone. Lay on the floor, bleeding from a cut on his head and holding his broken arm. The wandering star was damaged badly, leaking air from several holes, barely able to fly. But they were alive. Knelt beside him, tears streaming down her face. "You impossible man," she said. "You foolish, impossible man. Why would you do this? You could have died, you should have died." Managed a weak smile through his pain. "I told you, you are crew, we do not abandon crew." Held his good hand and cried. She cried for his bravery. She cried for his wounds. And she cried because she knew that when they reached safety, she would have to tell him the truth about who she really was, the truth about why those ships wanted her dead. She only hoped he would not hate her for the lies. The wandering star limped into Helix Station on its last breath of power. The engines were dying. The air was thin. His arm was wrapped in cloth torn from his own shirt, broken and throbbing with pain, but they had made it. Helix Station was a busy place, full of traders and travelers from 100 different worlds, expected to dock quietly, find a medical center, and begin the long process of fixing his ship. He did not expect what happened next. Within 1 hour of their arrival, the entire station went into chaos. Ships appeared outside the windows. Not 4 ships like before, but hundreds. Massive vessels in perfect formation, each one carrying the golden sun symbol of the Empire. This was the Royal Fleet, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Soldiers in shining armor marched through the station corridors. They were not attacking anyone. They were searching. People pressed themselves against walls and watched with wide eyes as the soldiers moved with purpose toward the docking area. Toward the wandering star. Stood at his ship's door, his broken arm hanging at his side, and watched as the soldiers stopped in front of him. They did not point weapons. They did not threaten. Instead, they formed 2 perfect lines and knelt on the floor. An officer stepped forward. His armor was decorated with gold, marking him as someone important. "We have been searching for 3 months," he said. "The entire empire has been looking, and you found her." His voice shook with emotion. "You found our queen." Blinked, "You're what?" The soldiers parted and walked forward. But she was not the he knew. She was wearing different clothes now, robes that seemed to be made of pure light. They shimmered and glowed with every step she took. On her head was a thin crown of silver metal, and around her neck hung jewels that probably cost more than would earn in 1,000 lifetimes. She looked like a different person, a queen. She said softly, "I need to explain." The officer spoke again, still kneeling. "This is Queen of the Throne. She rules 47 star systems. The celestial treasury belongs to her. She is the wealthiest person in the history of our galaxy." Could not speak. He could not move. He just stared at the woman he had taught to cook rice and clean air filters. The woman who had flooded his engine room with blue cooling liquid. The woman who had cried on his shoulder when he told her about his sister. "The merchant's assistant," he finally said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. Looked at the ground. "I lied, I am sorry, I lied about everything." The officer continued speaking, but barely heard him. Something about a coup. Something about advisors who wanted her dead so they could take her money and power. Something about the entire empire searching every corner of space for their missing queen. The soldiers took to a medical center and fixed his arm. They used technology he had never seen before, healing the broken bone in minutes instead of weeks. Then they brought him to a private room and told him to wait. He waited for hours. The room was beautiful, with soft furniture and windows looking out at the stars. Food appeared on a table, better food than had eaten in his entire life, but he did not touch it. He just sat and thought. She had lied. Every moment they spent together, every conversation, every smile. It was all built on lies. She was not a merchant's assistant. She was not a scared woman running from raiders. She was the most powerful person in the galaxy, playing a game he did not understand. The door opened and entered. She had removed her crown and changed into simpler clothes, though they were still finer than anything owned. Her guards tried to follow her, but she sent them away with a wave of her hand. They were alone. "You must hate me," said. Looked at her for a long moment. "I do not hate you, I do not understand you, but I do not hate you. I wanted to tell you the truth so many times." She sat down across from him, her hands twisting together nervously. "But I was afraid, afraid that everything would change, afraid that you would treat me differently." "I would have admitted. I would have been more careful, more distant. I do not know how to act around queens." "That is exactly why I stayed quiet," leaned forward. "Do you know what my life is like? Every person I meet wants something from me. Money, power, favors, influence. Even the people who say they love me, they love my crown, they love what I can give them." Her eyes were bright with tears that she would not let fall. "You were the first person in 30 years who wanted nothing. You found a stranger bleeding on a broken ship and you helped her. You used medicine meant for children because I needed it. You gave me your bed. You taught me to work. You nearly died fighting warships for me." She reached out and took his hands. Her fingers were no longer soft. They had small, rough spots from work, from learning to be useful on his ship. "You saw me," she whispered. "Not the queen, not the treasury, not the power, just me, just a woman who needed help. Do you have any idea how precious that is? How rare?" Did not know what to say, so he said nothing. He just held her hands and let her cry. After a while, wiped her eyes and straightened her back. The queen was returning, but something of remained in her eyes. "I must return to my throne," she said. "The people who tried to kill me are still out there. I have work to do, but I need you to know something." "What?" "Those 2 months on your ship were the happiest of my life. You showed me what it means to be human, and I will never forget it. I will never forget you." She stood up and walked to the door, But before she left, she turned back one more time. "The Empire will want to reward you," she said. "They will offer you gold and ships and anything you desire, but I want to offer you something different, something more." What asked? Smiled, and for a moment she looked exactly like the woman who had stood covered in blue cooling liquid, learning how to be ordinary. "A chance to change the galaxy, together, if you are willing." Then she was gone, and was left alone with his thoughts and a future he could not imagine. The throne room of the Empire was the most beautiful place had ever seen. Golden walls stretched up toward a ceiling painted with stars and planets. Thousands of nobles in expensive clothes filled the space, whispering to each other and watching the simple cargo hauler who stood before their queen. Felt small. His clothes were clean but ordinary. His hands were rough from years of work. Everyone in this room had more money in their pockets than he had earned in his entire life, but had asked him to come, so he came. Queen sat on a throne made of crystal and light. She wore her robes of shimmering starlight and her silver crown. But when she looked at, her eyes were warm with the friendship they had built over 2 months on a broken cargo ship. "The man before you saved my life," she announced to the court. Her voice was strong and clear. "When I was wounded and alone, he found me. He gave me his medicine, his bed, his protection. When warships came to kill me, he fought them with a cargo ship that had no weapons. He risked everything for a stranger." The nobles whispered louder. Some looked at with respect. Others looked confused. Why would anyone risk so much for nothing in return? "The Empire wishes to reward him," continued. "We could give him planets. We could give him fleets of ships. We could give him enough gold to last 1,000 generations." She paused and looked directly at. "But I asked him what he wanted, and his answer taught me something important." She stood from her throne and walked down the steps toward him. The nobles gasped at this break from tradition. Queens did not walk to common people. Common people came to queens. "What did you ask for?" said softly but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Tell them." Swallowed nervously. "I asked to keep helping people," he said. His voice was quieter than hers but steady. "I told her about the frontier colonies, about the children who go hungry while the inner systems have too much, about the sick people who die because medicine is too expensive. I asked for help to keep doing what I have always done." "And do you know what I realized?" Turned to face her court. "I realized that in my entire reign no one has ever asked me to help others. Everyone asks for things for themselves. More money, more power, more influence. But this man, this simple cargo hauler from a poor farming world, asked me to help strangers he will never meet." She climbed back to her throne and sat down with new purpose in her eyes. "I am the wealthiest person in the galaxy," she declared. "I have more money than entire civilizations, and I have spent my reign as all rulers do, collecting more and more while people suffer at the edges of my empire. Today, that changes." What followed shocked the galaxy. Queen announced the creation of the Frontier Aid Program. It was the largest humanitarian effort in recorded history. Medical ships would travel to every forgotten colony. Food would be delivered to hungry worlds. Schools would be built. Clean water systems would be installed. Billions and billions of credits flowing from the royal treasury to the people who needed it most. The noble houses protested. This was wasteful, they said. This was foolish. The money should be used for military power, for economic growth, for things that made the empire stronger. Listened to their complaints, then she told them a story. "A human taught me something," she said. "He said that his mother believed being human means choosing to be foolish in the right ways. Animals care only about survival and power, but humans can choose to care about more. We can choose to help when we do not have to. We can choose to give when we gain nothing." She looked at her nobles with eyes that burned. "I am choosing to be foolish in the right ways, and anyone who does not like it can leave my court." No one left. The program began within weeks. was put in charge of the entire Frontier Division, though he insisted on still flying his own ship. The Wandering Star was repaired and upgraded, but he asked them to keep its old appearance. He did not want to forget where he came from. Joined him whenever her duties allowed. She would leave behind her crown and her shimmering robes and put on simple gray clothes. She would help him deliver supplies to colonies that had never seen a royal visitor in their entire history. She learned to cook proper meals without burning them. She learned to fix air filters correctly. She even learned to calibrate the engines without flooding anything. The galaxy watched in amazement. The wealthiest queen in history working on a cargo ship, eating simple rice with a man who had once been nobody, laughing at her own mistakes as she learned to be useful. "People think we are crazy," said one night. They were sitting together in the small kitchen of the Wandering Star, watching stars drift past the window. "My advisors say I have lost my mind. The other empires think I am showing weakness." "Are you?" asked. Smiled. "I think I am finally being strong. It takes no strength to gather power and hold it. Anyone can do that, but choosing to give it away, choosing to help instead of take, choosing to be foolish in the right ways." She shook her head. "That requires more strength than I knew I had." Years passed. The Frontier Aid Program grew larger and larger. Millions of lives were saved. Children who would have died from hunger or sickness grew up healthy and strong. Entire colonies that had been forgotten were now thriving. And something strange began to happen. Other empires started their own programs. At first they did it to compete with the reputation, but soon helping others became normal, expected, the way things should be. It was not perfect. There was still suffering in the galaxy. There was still greed and cruelty and war. But something had shifted. A small crack of light had appeared in the darkness of how civilizations treated each other. All because a cargo hauler stopped to help a stranger. On the anniversary of their meeting, found alone on the bridge of the Wandering Star. He was looking out at the stars, thinking about his mother and father, thinking about his lost sister, thinking about all the paths that had led him here. "Your mother was right," said, standing beside him, "about being foolish in the right ways. I think that idea will outlive both of us." Nodded slowly. "She would have liked you." "I wish I could have met her." "She would have said you asked too many questions." He smiled. "And then she would have fed you until you could not move and told you stories until you fell asleep." Laughed, and in that moment she was not a queen. She was just a woman, standing next to a friend, looking at the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked. "Stopping for that distress signal, you could have had a simple life, quiet, safe." Thought about the question seriously. "I would do it again," he said finally. "Every time, because my mother was right. Being human means choosing to be foolish in the right ways, and helping you was the best foolish choice I ever made." Outside the window, a nebula bloomed with newborn stars. Somewhere in the distance, a colony was receiving medicine that would save dozens of children. Somewhere else, a family was eating their first full meal in months. And on a small cargo ship called the Wandering Star, two people from very different worlds sat together in comfortable silence, knowing that they had changed the galaxy. Not with weapons, not with wealth, not with power, but with the simple, foolish, deeply human choice to help someone in need.